a SWAT team, a search warrant, and a murder that's gone unsolved for years. Here's what we actually know. Just after 7 o'clock in the morning, on July 23rd, 2026, a SWAT team moved on a home in Burbank, California. The California Highway Patrol was leading the operation, and the rapper inside, the Compton superstar known as YG, was pulled out and detained while officers searched the property. It was tied to a case that has haunted West Coast rap for years, the unsolved murder of Drakeo the Ruler. But before anyone runs ahead of the facts, let's be clear about what this is. YG was detained, not arrested. He has not been charged with anything. Investigators have not publicly named him as a suspect, and he has flatly denied any involvement. What this really is a window into a murder case that has gone unsolved for nearly 5 years, and the man at the center of it was only 28 years old. A few important notes before we go further. Everything here is drawn from public reporting and official statements. Being detained during a search warrant is not the same as being arrested, charged, or convicted, and every person is presumed innocent unless a court proves otherwise. We are not accusing anyone of a crime. Our focus is the victim, Darrell Caldwell, and the question of who is responsible for his death. According to reporting from outlets including TMZ and local Los Angeles news, the operation was the execution of a search warrant. That's a key detail. A search warrant means a judge reviewed evidence and authorized investigators to search a specific place. Burbank SWAT team provided the tactical muscle while the Highway Patrol carried out the search. YG was held while it happened and then let go. That's the part a lot of the headlines rushed past. When the search was over, YG was released. He was not booked. He was not charged. Investigators executed their warrant, gathered what they came for, and the rapper walked. Through his camp, YG has stated clearly that he had nothing to do with the killing of Drakeo the Ruler. The timing made it explode online. The raid came just hours before YG was scheduled to step on stage for a long-awaited versus battle against the game, a celebration of Compton hip-hop. A morning that started with a SWAT team ended with one of the biggest nights of his year. And the internet predictably connected every dot it could find, whether the dots belonged together or not. For those who don't follow West Coast rap closely, YG is one of the biggest names to come out of Compton in the last 15 years. Born Keenan Jackson, he broke through with street anthems that made him a mainstream star, headlined festivals around the world, and became a fixture of Los Angeles hip-hop. That's why a search warrant at his home doesn't stay a local story. It becomes national news in a matter of minutes. To understand why this case matters so much, you have to understand who Drakeo the Ruler was. Born Darrell Caldwell, he was a Los Angeles original, the architect of a whole sound people called nervous music, off-kilter, coded, hypnotic. He didn't rap like anyone else, and a generation of West Coast artists study him. By his late 20s, he was one of the most influential voices to ever come out of South Los Angeles. His influence is hard to overstate. That slippery, whispered, coded style, critics called it the future of Los Angeles rap. You can hear his fingerprints on artists who blew up after him, some of whom never got to meet him. He turned a strange, singular way of talking into a whole lane. For a lot of young rappers in the city, Drakeo wasn't just an artist, he was the blueprint. His story was already a survival story before any of this. Years earlier, Drakeo had been charged in a separate murder case, and he beat it. He spent years locked up, much of it in solitary, fighting charges that critics said were built on his lyrics and his associations more than hard evidence. In 2020, he walked out of jail a free man, his name cleared. That earlier case became a lightning rod. Prosecutors leaned on his rap lyrics and his associations to build a gang conspiracy theory, and he spent long stretches in solitary confinement waiting for it to resolve. Critics, and eventually much of the public, saw it as an example of how the system can treat a young black artist's own words as a confession. When he was finally freed, it felt like vindication. For a moment, it looked like the hardest chapter of his life was behind him. He came home, went right back to work, and released some of the best music of his career. Fans who had followed his fight celebrated him like a hometown hero who had outlasted the system. He was building something. He was free, and he had every reason to believe the worst was over. Then came December 18th, 2021. Drakeo was booked to perform at the Once Upon a Time in LA Festival, a massive event at Bank of California Stadium and Exposition Park. Snoop Dogg and 50 Cent were on the bill. It should have been one of the proudest nights of his comeback. Instead, it became the night everything ended. Sometime after 8:30 that evening, a fight broke out backstage in the roadway behind the main stage. According to reporting, Drakeo was set upon by a large group of people in the chaos. In the middle of it, he suffered a single catastrophic wound to the neck. His mother would later describe a mob of dozens of masked men. It was over in seconds. Drakeo was rushed to a hospital, but the injury was too severe. He died that night. He was 28 years old. The festival was shut down early. The remaining performances were canceled. A rapper who had just won back his freedom was gone less than 2 years after walking out of a jail cell. The reaction was immediate and enormous. Peers, legends, and fans flooded social media in shock and grief. To many, it felt like a cruel, impossible ending, that a man who had fought the system and won could be killed at a music festival surrounded by security. And almost immediately, people started asking the question that still hasn't been answered: how did this happen, and who is responsible? Drakeo's family later filed a lawsuit against the festival's organizers, arguing that security failures allowed the deadly attack to happen in a supposedly secured area. The suit put a spotlight on how a fatal assault could unfold backstage at a major event. But a civil case over safety is a very different thing from a criminal case over who wielded the weapon, and the criminal side would prove far harder to move. It also raises an uncomfortable question about the event itself. How does a fatal attack by a group of people unfold backstage in a restricted area at a professionally produced festival with security everywhere? That question sat at the center of the family's civil case, and it's part of why this death felt so preventable and so enraging to the people who loved him. Now, to be transparent about the context reporters have raised, YG and Drakeo had a documented history of tension in the years before his death. That rivalry is part of why YG's name comes up in coverage at all, but a known rivalry is not evidence of a crime, and it is not a charge. Plenty of artists feud without violence. We mention it only because it's part of the public record, not because it proves anything. For years, the criminal investigation went almost nowhere, despite hundreds of people being in the area that night, and despite the attack happening at a professionally run festival, no one was arrested. The case became one of those maddening, high-profile homicides that everyone talks about and no one gets charged for. Reporting on the case has pointed to one recurring obstacle: witnesses who won't cooperate. In a crowd that size, investigators believed there were people who saw exactly what happened, but getting them to speak on the record in a world where cooperating carries its own dangers proved almost impossible. The silence, more than anything, is what kept the case frozen. Sadly, this is a pattern. Some of the most painful murders in hip-hop have gone years or forever without an arrest, not because no one knows what happened, but because the people who do won't or can't come forward. A code of silence, a real fear of retaliation, and communities that don't trust the police all collide. The result is families left without answers, sometimes for decades. But frozen is not the same as closed. Detectives kept the file open, tips came and went, and behind the scenes, investigators kept building, quietly, slowly, toward the kind of evidence that could justify going to a judge. Which brings us back to that morning in Burbank and the search warrant that put a SWAT team at YG's door. Here's what a search warrant actually tells us and what it doesn't. To get one, investigators have to convince a judge there's probable cause that evidence of a crime will be found at a specific location. That's a real legal bar, but it is a warrant to search, not a warrant to arrest. It does not mean the person who lives there did anything. It means investigators wanted to look. And detained is not the same as accused. During a search warrant, it is standard for officers to detain the people present, secure the scene, and ask questions. That happened here. Investigators questioned YG, searched the property, and let him go without an arrest. As of now, he has not been charged, and he has not been publicly identified as a suspect in Drakeo's death. None of that stopped the internet. Within hours, timelines were full of theories, edits, and confident verdicts from people who weren't in Burbank and haven't seen a shred of the evidence. This is exactly the moment where rumor outruns fact and where a person who has been charged with nothing can be convicted in the comments. We're not going to do that here. Because the honest truth is that the biggest questions are still open. Who attacked Drakeo the Ruler that night? Who wielded the weapon? Will the evidence gathered in that search lead to charges against anyone or to no one at all? Investigators aren't saying. And until they do, everything beyond the confirmed facts is just speculation. What isn't speculation is the cost. A 28-year-old artist, a father, a son, a once-in-a-generation talent who had already beaten one system was killed in a matter of seconds, and nearly 5 years later, his family is still waiting for answers. Whatever comes next in this investigation, that loss is the part that never changes. As for YG, he went on to perform that same night, a free man who has been charged with nothing. The investigation, meanwhile, appears to be moving again for the first time in a long time. Whether that motion leads anywhere, an arrest, a charge, or another dead end, is something only the coming months will reveal. However this ends, we want to leave you thinking about the person at the center of it, not the headlines around it. Darrell Caldwell, Drakeo the Ruler, was a rare and original voice who survived years behind bars only to be taken far too soon. We remember him. And we'll keep following this case until someone finally answers for what happened to him. This case is still open, and we'll follow it wherever it goes. Rest in peace to Darrell Caldwell, Drakeo the Ruler. This has been CrimeTownTV.